Hello and welcome to Maitri Therapy. This is a series of group exercises that I've put together over my time working with a variety of clients. We're going to look in each of our 8 sessions at different aspects of meditations, breathing techniques, some gentle bodywork movements, and go into some of the philosophy behind the yamas and the niyamas of yogic philosophy, to talk about how these things really fit into a daily life. This is the first session in this process, and in this particular session, we're going to focus on ahimsa, or nonviolence. Each session that we do will look at first a mantra meditation that we will recite out loud. You'll get a breathwork technique, you'll get a gentle bodywork technique, and you'll also get a meditation. This first session on Ahimsa is going to focus on a very basic breathing technique of a balanced breath. And we're going to work on a gentle body work exercise. It's really just going to look at learning how to notice what's going on in our bodies. Our meditation today is going to be called a Vipassana meditation, and it's going to help us to learn how to note what's going on around us and how to release those things. Each of the sessions is going to open with the blessing of loving kindness. Now, if you're following along with this workbook, which is the workbook that I wrote for these sessions, your blessing of loving kindness is going to be located on pages 8 and 9 in the workbook. When we start our sessions, we will start with reciting the blessing of loving kindness out loud. I will read it out loud, and I would encourage you to read it along with me out loud. And then I'll go into a little bit of a discussion. I'm going to read directly from the book for the discussion, and then talk a little bit about the ideas that are expressed in there. And then we'll move into our exercises. At the end of each of our sessions, I will ask you the questions that are in the end of each of these lessons. They're meant to help you to kind of think about some of the ideas that are being expressed in the book and how to apply some of our yamas and niyamas and into everyday life. So without further ado, we will now start with the blessing of loving kindness. Now, with the blessing of loving kindness, this is a mantra meditation, and the mantra is repeated 6 times in this meditation. The first time we repeat the mantra, we're going to focus on ourselves. The next time we repeat the mantra, we will focus on our families. The next round of the mantra, we focus on our teachers. And when we say teachers, we don't necessarily mean our 3rd grade teacher. We mean anybody who's really taught us important spiritual life lessons. And then we focus on our friends, our enemies, and lastly, all sentient beings, which means all living creatures. And so we will get started. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. May no harm come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always meet with success. May I have the wisdom, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life. May all of my family be happy, be peaceful, and be free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they always meet with success. May they have the wisdom, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life. May all of my teachers be happy, be peaceful, and be free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they always meet with success. May they have the wisdom, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life. May all of my friends be happy, be peaceful, and be free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no problems come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May they always meet with success. May they have the wisdom, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life. May all of my enemies be happy, be peaceful, and be free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no problems come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May they always meet with success. May they have the wisdom, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life. May all sentient beings, seen and unseen, born and to be born, be happy, be peaceful, and be free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no problems come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May they always meet with success. May they have the wisdom, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life. Now, if you recited that with me, think about what that experience was like to recite these words together with other individuals. What did the words mean to you? Some people have difficulty with the idea of the stanza that focuses on our enemies. And the reason why that is we generally don't want to wish pleasantries to those who have hurt us. But when we really think about it, when we think about the times when we have hurt others, we didn't hurt those people necessarily because we wanted to. It was generally because we were hurting ourselves. And when we look at people that hurt us, a lot of times if we reframe our situation a little bit and think about how those individuals are probably hurting when they hurt us, then it's a little bit easier to give them some loving kindness. And if we give those individuals some loving kindness, that might be the only loving kindness they've ever received. I know a lot of the people in my life that have hurt me did not hurt me because they wanted to hurt me. They hurt me because they knew no other way. So when we go back and we go over that blessing and loving kindness, and I encourage you to recite that daily, think about that. Think about how giving love and kindness to those who have hurt us might help them to maybe not hurt somebody in the future. And a lot of times the people that we've hurt the worst are ourselves. And think about what it would be like to give yourself some loving kindness. From here, we're going to move into an introduction into what this session is all about. I'm just going to read to you from the book, where on pages, starting on page 10, and what the talk is about Ahimsa. But first, we'll talk a little bit about what this session is, what we're going to be doing in this session, and how it'll be laid out. So, Maitri Therapy, Session 1. The first session is focused on thinking about Ahimsa, or nonviolence, learning a basic breathing technique to help balance out the nervous system and calm the senses, a grounding exercise that can be practiced anywhere, and a meditation that focuses on acknowledging everything that draws our focus away from meditating. The worksheet on Ahimsa and self-harm follows. The exercises and completing them first will help you look deeper into your own heart and answer those questions more truthfully. Ahimsa. The word Ahimsa can be broken down into two parts. Ah, which means not, and Himsa, which means killing or violence. Together, Ahimsa means non-violence. But the meaning does not necessarily stop with outward physical violence. BKS Iyengar notes it has a whole positive meaning, love. This love embraces all creation, for we are the children of the same Father, the Lord. The yogi believes that to kill or destroy a thing or being is to insult its creator. He goes on to say that violence exists in the mind and is due to fear from ignorance and supposition. The practice of Ahimsa is the practice of love, learning, and accepting. We can love an individual but still dislike the acts of that person. We can learn to understand the reasoning behind the acts, as this will help us to accept them and offer kindness. Often those who act in violence are acting in fear of being hurt when all they truly desire is kindness. Ahimsa is not just acting and reacting towards those outside of ourselves. It is also acting and reacting towards ourselves. We harm ourselves in a variety of ways, through our actions and through our own self-talk. Think about the things you have said to yourself throughout the day. Are they kind? Are they supportive? Would you say the same thing to a good friend who is experiencing something similar? Why or why not? Being kind and accepting ourselves can be extremely difficult. We know all our own wrongdoings. We know what skeletons are hiding in our closets. We hear the thoughts in our heads when nobody else does. If anyone knows how evil we can be, it is ourselves. And for that, we often cannot forgive. The practice of Ahimsa states that we do forgive ourselves as well as others, because the reason we hurt ourselves is because we hurt. The theme of this book is non-judgment and understanding which have their foundation in Ahimsa. As you attempt all the exercises to follow, just notice what happens. Attempt to disengage from your thoughts and observe where your mind goes. Notice if you begin to judge yourself for attempting these practices and for your performance. Remember, practice, not perfection. So when we talk about Ahimsa isn't just outward nonviolence. It's not just, not hitting somebody. It's also in our thoughts. And a lot of people have a hard time with this idea that practicing nonviolence also means being kind to ourselves as well as everybody on the outside. When we're kind to ourselves, we accept ourselves. We accept ourselves with all of our faults, just like we do with the people that we love and care for. So Ahimsa is not just something that we outwardly do. It's something that happens inwardly as well. When we think about how we talk to ourselves, that is a really good place where we find that we are not kind. If we have difficulty with accepting ourselves and accepting our own behaviors and our thoughts, then we are not practicing Ahimsa. Ahimsa is showing kindness to ourselves and showing kindness to all. With that, we're going to move on to our next exercise. So we're going to start with a balanced belly breath. So belly breath is using our belly. If you've ever noticed little kids running around and playing, you might notice that they breathe a lot with their bellies. Their bellies go in and out, in and out, in and out when they're breathing really hard. And at some point in our development, when we become, these much more intelligent and thoughtful human beings, we start to move from this belly breath up here to a chest breath. The problem is, though, that when we breathe really heavy up here, what we tend to do is we induce fear, because breathing up here will cause us to hyperventilate. We don't get as much oxygen as we probably need, and we don't get as much clarity as we need from that, because when we're hyperventilating, there's not enough oxygen going to the brain, and then we start to get kind of dizzy and uncomfortable. And if you've ever had a panic attack, usually they do start with a very rapid breath up here. So the more we practice our belly breathing, the better. Another way to describe belly breath is diaphragmic breath. And the reason why we call it diaphragmic breath is because we're really using the diaphragm. So right here at the bottom of the rib cage is the diaphragm, and that really is what causes the in and the out breath. As we're doing this breathing exercise, to begin, maybe start with your hands on your belly. And as you inhale, then expand the belly and feel your hands come apart. And then as you exhale, contract the belly and feel your hands come together. This could be a really good way to bring your mind to your belly breathing. The more you practice belly breath, the easier it's going to be to use your belly breath. Sometimes I like to teach you lying down and putting your hands on your belly and feeling the up and the down of your belly. From here, right now, what we're going to be doing, though, is sitting in a position, kind of like what I'm doing. I'm sitting in what's called easy pose. And I've got my feet one in front of the other, and I'm sitting on a pillow. So if you choose to do this, that's great. If you choose to sit on a chair, what I'm going to ask you to do is to move forward on your chair so that the bottoms of your legs are parallel with the floor to the best of their ability, and your feet are nice and flat on the floor. Now, if you're a little short like I am, you might have to scooch forward on your seat in order to get there. Most chairs keep me, if I sat all the way back, my feet go nowhere near the floor. They just kind of hang there. So I have to scooch forward. That's why I like to do these things from a seat on the floor. And then also my little buddy here gets to be part of what we're doing. In any event, so what we're going to do is we will start with our belly breath. We're going to practice a few rounds of just breathing. So expanding, contracting the belly as we breathe. And then we're going to slowly move into a counted belly breath. So as we get better with our belly breath, then I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to start snapping my fingers to count. Kind of like a palindrome. about a second between each count. Our balanced breath is going to be a count of 3 on the inhale, a pause for 1, and a count of 3 on the exhale. So what we're trying to do is to restrict the breath and to control the diaphragm enough so that we get enough air in that count of 3, so that we can sustain ourselves and then exhale it all out for the count of 3. Now, we're not trying to just take a giant inhale and hold the breath for as long as possible until I say to let it go. That's not what we're trying to do. The word pranayama means prana, which is life force. And so we think about the breath as life force. If we have no breath, then we cannot live. And yama means restriction. So the practice of pranayama, or breath work, is ultimately restriction and controlling the breath. Yogic philosophy says that we only are given a certain number of breaths that we can take in our lifetime. So we want to try to control that as much as possible so we can control how long our lives are. I'm not sure how much of that is actually true, but I do know that some of these breathing exercises can be really, really helpful for us to find balance in our own lives. So let's start with our belly breath, and then we'll move into the counted belly breath. So if you like, you can place your hands on your belly. I'm also going to suggest, however you're sitting, to try to keep your spine as nice and straight as possible. So imagine your spine one straight line. We can do this by trying to tuck the tailbone under a little bit and then pulling the shoulder blades together. Notice that when I pull my shoulder blades together, I'm not pushing my chest out. I'm just opening it up a little bit. So if I were to really poke my chest out like this, it's going to look a little bit silly. It's going to be super uncomfortable to do as we're doing our breathing exercise. The other thing that I really, really want to do is I want to take the crown of my head and I want to try to push it up towards the ceiling. Now notice the change in my body when I do this. If I push my head towards the ceiling, it really opens up my neck and my shoulders. So I'm able to get a good amount of breath in. So if you like I said, we'll take our hands and place them on our bellies. Nice and loose. We don't want them to be too tight together and holding together like this. We just kind of want them nice and loose. And through the noses, we're going to breathe. We're going to breathe in and out through the nose. So we're going to inhale and expand the belly. And then exhale, contract. Inhale, expand the belly. And exhale and contract. Inhale, expand the belly. Exhale, contract. Again, inhale, expand the belly. Exhale, contract. One more time, inhale, expand the belly. And exhale, contract. Now I'm going to add the counting to it. So inhale for a count of 3, expanding the belly. Hold. Exhale for 3. Hold. Inhale for 3. 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 Hold. Exhale for 3. Last time. Inhale for 3. Hold. Exhale for 3. Now take a moment to think about what that might have been like for you to do the breathing. Were you able to keep your inhale to this extent for the three counts? And when you did it, were you able to get enough air in to sustain yourself? The same thing on the exhale. We were able to control that exhale for that time period. Now, when I teach this to people who are maybe struggling with their anxiety or maybe having trouble sleeping at night, what I like to do is, if they really like this particular exercise, is to teach them to use their own heart rate as a counter. So breathe in for 3 heartbeats, hold on to it for 1, exhale for 3 heartbeats. What this really does is it really focuses our attention on just the one thing, my breath, and really grounds me because I'm using my own heartbeat. If that works for you, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay too. In the next few sessions after this session, we're going to work on expanding either the inhale or the exhale portion of our balanced breath. So the balanced breath is the equal inhale and exhale. When we do that, we're kind of giving ourselves a little bit of a balance. So if I'm feeling a little bit excited, then it might help me come down. If I'm feeling a little bit depressed, then it might help me come up. The next few exercises in the next few sessions will be expanding on the exhale. So having a 3 count inhale with a 6 count exhale. And then the third session will be expanding the inhale and shortening the exhale. So inhale for 6 and exhale for 3. Now these are just kind of basic counts that you can use. The idea being that you can create whatever type of count you want. With the balance, it has to be equal on both sides. And when we get into the other types of breath, I'll explain what those types of breath are meant to do. But for now, balanced breath is what we have. And if you like to go ahead and practice that on your own, I encourage you to at least try it. Our bodywork exercise today is going to be, it's called grounding. And I actually took this and adapted it from another book. It's called Trauma Sensitive Yoga. And this actually comes from page 97 in that book. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to read the dialogue to you. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just try to do what it is that I'm asking and what I'm telling you to do. And really pay attention to what's happening. This is a very, very gentle bodywork exercise. We're not actually doing much in the way of movement. We're just really starting to figure out how to notice. So, if you like, take a moment to find a comfortable seat. You may choose to sit on a chair, or you may choose to sit on the floor. You may choose to decide to use pillows to prop yourself up in a comfortable way. Give yourself a moment to adjust and make yourself more comfortable. Your movements may be very small, or they may be bigger. If you like, notice how you are moving and adjusting as you consider yourself making yourself more comfortable. When you're ready, take a moment to notice where you are connected to the floor. If you are sitting in a chair, it may be that your feet are on the ground. If you're sitting on the floor, notice what part of your body is connected to the floor. If you like, give yourself a moment to notice as best you can where and how you are connected to the floor beneath you. If you like, feel free to interact with how you are connected to the floor. You can move your body, wiggle your toes, or shift your weight around as a way of bringing attention to your connection to the floor beneath you. As you do this practice of interacting with how you are connected to the floor beneath you, just notice what you notice. It may be flickers of sensation, brief moments of connection. If you like, focus on those moments and investigate them for a few breaths. When you're ready, feel free to let the practice go and move on. And when you're coming out of that, take a moment to really think about what that experience was like for you. So one of the things that we really don't think much about is our connection to the floor. And one of the things I like to say to my clients is that the floor is always there to catch you, whether you want it to be or not. And we really never think about that. We never think about how something is really always there to catch us, the floor, the ground, and how we're always connected to it in some way. Some of the people I've worked with over the years have used this exercise, this just noticing the floor and how they're connected to the floor, as a grounding exercise to help them with things such as test anxiety, or just getting through a really difficult experience. This is one of the type of exercises that we can do without anyone knowing. So it's a completely internal coping strategy. Internal coping strategies are things that we can do for ourselves and by ourselves that don't involve another person. These types of grounding exercises are a good example of that. If you tend to practice this one a little bit more often, then you'll start to notice that as you go into something that's difficult, your body will naturally start to notice the floor, and you'll naturally start to ground yourself until you don't have to think about it anymore. Just a suggestion. You can try it if you like on your own. So next we're going to move into our meditation. And the meditation that I've chosen for this first session is a Vipassana meditation. So let me explain what Vipassana is. Vipassana is a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit is the ancient language of yoga and Buddhism. In Sanskrit, the word Vipassana is loosely translated to insight. When we say insight, we mean sight inside. So understanding what's going on inside of us. Not many of us really have a good grasp on what's actually going on inside of us. And so these types of meditations, a Vipassana style meditation, really focuses us on noticing what's going on inside of our bodies, how the external affects us, and how we react to it. The practice of mindfulness is based in a Vipassana practice. So the word mindfulness is a take on insight. When we're being mindful, we're aware of what's going on around us, but we're not being overwhelmed by it. So imagine somebody with bad PTSD that's hypervigilant. They might walk into a room of people and notice everything that's happening around them, and they're not able to really focus on any one thing because they're overwhelmed by their senses. Or somebody who has bad anxiety and they walk into a situation and they notice what's going on inside of them. They don't understand why their body is reacting the way that it is. They can't see anything near them that could be evoking some of this fear response. And so they get overwhelmed by their internal experience. So we can get overwhelmed by our external experience, what it does to us, and we can also get overwhelmed by our internal experience. If we're feeling sick, we're feeling uncomfortable, we can get overwhelmed by that. This practice is meant to, this Vipassana practice, this Vipassana meditation practice, is meant to help us to observe and let go. It's observation without judgment. Just notice that it's there and let it go. This particular meditation is called noting and labeling. And so what we're going to do in this meditation, and what I'm going to cue you into doing through the meditation, is noticing where your thoughts get pulled away. If you notice a sound, instead of recognizing what the sound is and trying to figure out what's going on, then what we do is we just note to ourselves hearing and let the sound go. When I first started teaching these classes, one of the things that would go on all the time when we were doing this is the office was a long, thin building. It had been an old bowling alley years ago, and the floor was kind of hollow. So if somebody with big shoes, like some of us girls like to wear, would be walking up and down the hallway, would make a lot of noise. And anybody who was going to see their therapist was down the hallway. What I used to say to people when we would try this practice for the first time is, we'll hear somebody walking down that hallway, and instead of stopping and thinking, who is that? What are they doing? Why do they have to be so noisy when they're walking? These floors are annoying in this office. Instead of focusing on that stuff, let's just focus on the fact that we heard something and let it go. Also, that office just happened to be across the street from a firehouse. So whenever there was a car accident or something like that in the community, and it was a really small community, the fire engines would go by. And I would say to them, you might hear the fire engines go by. Instead of wondering if they're going to your house or if any of your friends are in danger or anything like that, let's try to separate from that. Just note the fact that we're hearing something and let that go, instead of having that thought process start to turn into words and then kind of take us away. In this process, what we're starting to do is to learn to separate and observe. And the separation and observation is insight and is mindfulness. So when we go into doing a meditation, the way I like to teach meditation is, if you're going to be sitting on the floor, what I usually suggest is to sit on something, especially if you have tighter hips, because the higher you go, the looser the hips are going to feel. So instead of saying Indian style, which is, where we're kind of hooked in together like this, we like to sit with ankle in front of ankle, which you can't quite see from this angle, but I have my ankles kind of one in front of the other, and the fronts of my legs are kind of flat on the floor. Now, if you can't do that, that's okay. If you want to sit with your feet a little bit further out in front of you and that's comfortable, then that works. The idea being, though, that we really don't want to cross anything, especially in our legs, because if we cross something, then what we're likely to do is to cut off the circulation to whatever's crossed, and then our meditation is going to go to the fact that my foot's falling asleep, and not the fact that, I'm trying to just note and label what's going on around me. These are kind of good rules to use whenever we're meditating if we're sitting down. If you're sitting in a chair, then I always suggest to, just like we were doing in our breath work, to sit towards the edge of the chair. Don't use the back of the chair. Sit forward in the chair and keep your back straight. Feet flat on the floor, as flat as you can make them. If you need to scooch all the way forward, then you do so. If you have to put your feet on a block or a cushion or something like that to make them flat, then make them flat. The other thing that I always suggest is sitting up as straight as you can and pulling the shoulder blades together slightly. So if I pull my shoulder blades together slightly, again, just like in our breathing exercises, it makes my spine nice and straight. What that's going to do is going to help the oxygen to flow up and down through my esophagus into my lungs. And it's also going to reduce any possibility of my circulation getting cut off. For my shoulders, what I really like to do is to suggest we kind of like roll them back a little bit and then allow them to hang. So I'm not controlling them. If I have arms on whatever chair I'm sitting in, I'm not going to use my armrests, right? I'm just going to take my arms and let my arms kind of hang nicely out of the shoulder socket and land wherever they land. Now, as far as hand placement, some people like to go palms down, some prefer palms up. Some prefer to do a mudra. It is completely up to you how you want to do this. Other people like to go palm and palm in the middle. That's up to you, however you choose to do it. So either palms down, palms up, or hand in hand. Just like we were doing with our breathing exercises, we like to push the top of the head or the crown of the head up towards the ceiling to try to keep it nice and straight. So we want to keep our bodies nice and straight. We want to try to avoid cutting off our circulation in any way. So from here, whatever posture you have decided to take, just make sure that you can comfortably sit in this posture for about 15 minutes, because that's about how long we're going to be doing this meditation. Once you've decided on how you want to sit, then I'd like you to experiment with closing your eyes. Now, for some of us, closing our eyes is not an easy thing to do. So in that situation, if closing your eyes is really uncomfortable, then go ahead and find a fixed spot on the floor in front of you, maybe 6 to 8 feet in front of you, that you can focus on. If you're doing this in a room full of people, my suggestion is do not use another human being to look at, because that is kind of creepy. Even with our eyes closed, we know when we're being watched. And that will be really difficult for the other person that you're looking at. In any event, so gently closing the eyes, and if they're not closed, then staring at a non-moving point in front of you. Keeping your back nice and straight, but relax. Allow your body to breathe. No forcing of the breath. Notice the body rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. Just begin with this awareness of the body breathing, rising and falling in each in-breath and each out-breath. Just allow your body to breathe. Rising in and falling out. Rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. Continue with this practice until there's an awareness of each of your 5 senses. If you happen to notice any sensation of pain or discomfort, at the moment of awareness and without any judgment, note to yourself twice, feeling, feeling. If you happen to notice any sounds, at the moment of awareness, note to yourself twice, hearing, hearing. If while you're sitting there you happen to notice a taste in your mouth, at the moment of awareness and without judgment, note to yourself twice, tasting, tasting. If while you're sitting there, some closed-eyed visions drift through your mind, at that moment of awareness, without judgment, note to yourself twice, seeing, seeing. If you happen to notice any heartfelt emotions welling up inside of you, at that moment of awareness and without judgment, note to yourself twice, feeling, feeling. If boredom begins to settle in, at that moment of awareness and without judgment, note to yourself twice, boring, boring. If your concentration begins to wane and there's an endless drifting of your mind, at that moment of awareness and without judgment, note to yourself twice, wandering, wandering. Note each sensation as it becomes dominant in your mind. The hitching post for your mind shifts from the awareness of one sensation to another. And your practice becomes a stream of consciousness, mentally noting each sensation as it arises. Feeling, feeling, hearing, hearing, seeing, seeing, feeling, feeling, wandering, wandering, feeling, feeling, hearing, hearing, moment to moment awareness. So keeping your back comfortably relaxed but straight, allowing the body to breathe, no restriction, no forcing of the breath. Bring your mind back to noticing the rising of the body on your in-breath and the falling on the out-breath. Just allow your body to breathe, rising in and falling out, rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. As you focus on your breathing, your attention is naturally going to get drawn away to somewhere in your five senses. As you notice your attention being taken away from your breath, just note that sensation and let it go. If you happen to note any sensation of pain or discomfort, including your foot falling asleep, without judgment, note to yourself twice, feeling, feeling. If while you're sitting there noticing your breath, you happen to notice a sound other than that of my voice, and that moment of awareness, and without judgment, note to yourself twice, hearing, hearing. If you happen to notice a taste in your mouth, at that moment of awareness and without judgment, note to yourself twice, tasting, tasting. If you're sitting there, focusing on your breath, And you notice some closed-eyed visions start drifting past your mind's eye. At that moment of awareness, without judgment, note to yourself twice, seeing. If sitting there noticing your breath brings up any heartfelt emotion, at that moment of awareness, note to yourself twice, feeling. If while you're sitting there you begin to get bored, without judgment, note to yourself twice, boring. If while you're sitting there, trying to focus on your breath, you notice that your concentration begins to wane and there's an endless drifting of your mind. At the moment of awareness, and without judgment, note to yourself twice, wandering. Note each sensation as it becomes dominant in your mind. The hitching post for your mind shifts from the awareness of one sensation to another. And your practice becomes a stream of consciousness, mentally noting each sensation as it arises. Feeling, hearing, seeing, feeling, wandering, feeling, hearing, moment to moment awareness. And slowly begin to bring your awareness back into your body, back into the room. If you like, you can bring some gentle movement into the body, maybe rocking from side to side, maybe wiggling your fingertips or your toes, slowly blinking the eyes open if they were closed. Just coming back to this space where we started our practice. And as you start to come back to this space where we started, perhaps start to notice what's different for you. Was this something that you found useful? Was it easy? Were you able to note and label the things that pulled your attention away? Or were you able to just focus on your breath? And these are important questions to ask. We can practice this type of a meditation wherever we are. Again, it's a really good internal coping strategy to just notice what's going on. If I'm starting to become overwhelmed, maybe noticing what sensations I'm experiencing in my body and how that's happening for me. Think about when you look back over this whole session, which of these 3 exercises do you think that you could incorporate into your own safety plan, your own plan of how am I going to manage a situation if I become a little bit overwhelmed with it so that I don't end up doing something really dumb, because that's what ends up happening. become overwhelmed with our situations and react in ways that usually are not the smartest things. Before we move on to the discussion on Ahimsa, just take a few moments to really think about how you can use some of these exercises in your own life. And what was the experience like in doing them? Do you feel a little bit more comfortable now? Do you think you felt more comfortable after your breathing exercise? Think about these things and how they might help you in your day-to-day life. The whole point of doing this is helping you to build some internal coping strategies, some things that you can do that can help yourself. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the questions on Ahimsa. So those questions are all sitting on page 18 in your workbook. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and read what it says in the workbook, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these questions so that you can kind of get an idea of why I'm asking these questions. You can go ahead and answer these questions to the best of your ability on your own. And really think about what your answers to these questions are. So, thinking about Ahimsa. Ahimsa means nonviolence that can be taken as violence against others, but can also mean nonviolence against the self. Take a few moments to think about nonviolence against yourself, both actions and self-talk, and then answer the following questions. If you were going to meet yourself, do you think you're the type of person you would want to be friends with? Why or why not? If you answered no to the previous question, what type of changes would you need to make in order to consider yourself a friend? What's something that you've said to yourself about yourself that you would not say to a friend or a loved one? Why would it be okay to say such a thing to yourself but not to someone you care about? If you heard a friend, loved one say whatever you listed in question 3, how would that make you feel? How did hearing yourself think that to yourself make you feel? Where have you heard someone else in your life speak to you like you speak to yourself? What do you think you can do to change the way you speak to yourself? And what effect do you think that might have on how you feel? These are some really interesting questions and ways that we can incorporate Ahimsa into our everyday life, noticing our internal self-talk. So a lot of times when I start to work with people that are really struggling and tend to talk about some of this really negative internal self-talk that goes on, I ask them, is that something that you would say to somebody else? Are you the type of person that you would want to be friends with? I mean, we know where all of our skeletons are hidden. So we see ourselves, we think as clearly as anybody could, or even more clearly. But the thing is that we don't always see ourselves as others see us. If somebody didn't know about those skeletons, how would they react to you? Would they react to you the same way that you react to yourself? Would they beat you up like you beat yourself up? A lot of times our self-hate and our anger towards ourselves for making mistakes can really, really derail us and cause us to do some pretty terrible things because we don't think we deserve what we're getting. The word Maitri, which is what this whole practice is based on, it means loving kindness. It means loving kindness for ourselves. And it's actually what I have tattooed on the inside of my wrist. And the reason why I put that there was because of the fact that I wasn't always a very good friend to myself either. I decided to tattoo Maitri on the inside of my wrist. It's my right wrist. The reason why I did that was this is the wrist that I will give you to shake your hand if we ever meet in person. Before I can extend that friendship to you, I need to have it for myself. And so this lesson on Ahimsa is very much tied to the idea of Maitri, of kindness and generosity and love for ourselves. And that's what this lesson is about in the first session. Really starting to understand how we tend to hurt ourselves and thinking about, where did these thoughts come from? Who said these things to me, and why are they sitting in my head? Maybe I know that these things are not really true, but why do I keep saying them to myself? Through this practice, through all of these sessions that we're about to go through together, my hope is that you will be able to answer those questions clearly and honestly, and you'll be able to start to see how to break down these walls, the walls of loving kindness. Because if I don't have it here for myself, I have nothing to give you. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I hope you tune in for some of the other sessions to come. The next session will focus on satya, or non-lying. And we'll do another exercise of breath work where we start to increase our exhales. We'll do a gentle body work exercise again. Does not involve movement just yet, but later on we will start involving some movement, and another Vipassana meditation. So I hope you join us and check out the next couple of episodes. Thank you.